Hey folks, ET here, and I'm coming at you with the week ahead as I do every Sunday evening. So we're going to take a look at a few tickers tonight. We're going to take a look at BABA, JPM, and LMT. There's just some random picks from some users that had asked to view these, and we'll kind of go through them as we go. So we're going to start with BABA right here, and as we can see, it had a pretty flat day the other day while everything else ran. Looking at its premiums, there are quite a few calls going later out into the year for the 110. Its net flow is still strong. Let's just check its 5-day, and so it's actually coming back up a little bit as we see there. And its net premiums, there were quite a few calls and puts bought on Friday, so pretty even there in that regard. Taking a look at its dealer Greek buildup, we have the tiniest of red bars, just a very tiny one, and it is actually an inverse, which is we short at that spot, but it is changing. Let me click that again. It is changing towards the upside, which is considered a long by BABA. I don't really like these percent returns here. It's not a ticker I play often, and one of it's because its data is always a little kind of crazy because China names just kind of do what they want. So a movement up, if this red bar becomes green, that is obviously bullish for BABA since its back test is the opposite of a lot of other tickers. Going into its price distribution, let's take a look. Pretty even going into Tuesday. All right, let's just go ahead and check each day to see where we're going. Still even there, not a whole lot of change going on. Gets bearish. This would be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. This would be bearish into Thursday. And then Friday, it's sort of even again with a little bit more bearish of a lean. Looking at its dealer OI, though, as we kind of see this shrinking to more towards a potential bullish position in BABA. Looking at its dealer OI, it is slightly, just ever so slightly bearish, okay, going into this week's expiry, and ever so slightly bullish, right, going into next week's expiry. So that's interesting to see there as well. Remember these change frequently, so checking them every day is quite helpful. Let's just take a look at its filter going into the week for its largest GEX. Let's just take a look. It's around $80.97 right now, so it is above this potential repel positive level. It's kind of sitting right around here. This is really where our price is kind of at. Its largest pull is at 85 negative wise going into the week. So if it's at 80.97 currently, there's a potential that it could pull towards that price at some point during the week. All right, going into its GEX and VEX profile, this is a weird one. It seems like price is starting to gain support the higher it goes currently, but up here in these lower areas, no price support. Let's just go ahead and take a look at its levels real quick. It is just kind of hanging out in this ghost zone, and would you believe it? It's sitting on a GEX level right now, and it is possible where there's that 85 where it could repel from, so it could see a nice run from 80 to 85, which would be pretty great. Remember, green repels, so it could push off and reject here. If it gets above with some force, it could also get above this and repel upwards towards another pull level. But so we will see how that plays out with BABA. That's what I'm looking at. It does have some downside potential as well. As you can see, this 78 GEX level feels pretty strong for it last week, so that's pretty interesting to see. It had a bad day Thursday and Friday. It finally got above, but a lot of things did, but then it just consolidated the rest of the day after its big run. So that is BABA for us. So we're going to go ahead and look next at JPM. I've got its levels pulled up here, so we're going to go ahead and copy them. Banks have been beat up quite badly lately, so interesting to see how JPM's data turns out when we look at it. I don't look at these things beforehand, folks. I wait until so we can kind of all do it together, even though you're just watching this asynchronous. Let's put those levels in and see. So it is at a rejection spot currently a little bit. So that is also interesting to see. A nice pullback. 135 seems to be a place that it really likes to bounce from. Even when the candles get a little bit below, it always finds a way to get right back above to this price. Interesting that banks have been really beaten up, and it's got a pretty nice level up there at 140. So let's just dig into its data really quick and see what it all looks like. It definitely does not have a lot of heavy call flow going into it. Its net flow for the close wasn't that great, and it's still pretty deep pretty deep into the red as far as we go for its net flow for its 5-day. Looking at its Dealer Greeks back test, it is an inverse as well, so it's actually a buy on the green bars. Okay, so a buy on the green bars. If it retests that 35, that 135, that'd be a great spot for price to repel again if it decides to retrace a little bit. If not, it could easily go ahead and get back up and pull to one of these levels up here, which is interesting to see. So that's one data point a little bit there that says JPM could be a decent long at some point during the week for the patient. Scrolling down a little bit, obviously, so for Tuesday it shows quite a bearish day, but if you really look at these bars together, it looks more of a midday to me. Wednesday gets a little bit more bullish. Thursday, same. Friday, more bullish again. So if I could find a nice JPM dip and this data holds a little bit right here, that would be a pretty interesting long for me going into later in the week. Obviously, there we had the debt ceiling news that it might pass. So potentially, everything could go up or way down, depending on how the actual open market reacts to this news. Looking at its dealer OI, it's pretty bearish going into the next few weeks, which is interesting because that's a little compelling as we look at some of these positions, some of the positioning here for its price distribution, that it has some potential up. But like I said, these things do change. Let's check this week's expiry to see what we have. Boy, its largest negative really looks like it's it's actually that 129, which would be crazy to see. This, as you can see, this 135 and 136 price repels, which is about what we end up seeing quite a bit of the time. That's very interesting to see. JPM's really kind of been a mess lately, but like I said, all banks have. So this 137 here is where our price is sitting at currently. So it could, for what it's worth, if it does decide to have a bullish week, like I said, hit this 136 again and repel, or hit that 135 again and repel upwards. It is potential, but its biggest pull is currently 129. Now remind yourself, check these after about an hour and a half after open as well to see if anything changes, because sometimes you'll see a big bar go ahead and show up later on that day, and if to the left or the right of here, and then you can kind of price your things around there. Excuse me. Taking a look at its Gex and Vex profile, it is not supported up here very much at all as we're looking at it, and 128 is kind of crazy, because if we look at this 128 and this 129, pretty close to each other for its largest negative pull and where price is supported the most. So some of these things are a bit mixed on the signals when it comes to JPM, which is a little bit interesting to see. This is one of those ones that I really like to play JPM. I'll tell you, anytime it gets over 140 over the past few months, I've tried to short it, and when it gets below this 136 into this 135 range, I've set a trigger to potentially long it. Sometimes I miss it, sometimes I just don't see what I like, and I don't go for it, but that has been really kind of a bread and butter play over the past about month. It feels like for JPM, maybe only a few weeks, but that's what it's felt like as of late. All right, that is JPM for us, our last one, and this is an interesting one to talk about because LMT has been beat down, and not only has it been beat down, but if the debt ceiling passes, there was a lot of wording in there for more spending on defense. Now, sometimes it's the buy rumor, sell the news. Sometimes it's just go ahead and buy the news. We will see. It looks strong at 140. It really has been beaten down, and it's just been coming down and down and down. It feels like a lot lately. It has a pretty big range here, really. 440 to 456 is a nice range. You can see this 440 held real strong on Thursday. All right, and then on Friday, everything kind of went up a little bit, and it managed to get up a good $11 from that repel, from that green repel at that point. Just taking a look at some more levels, it has some pretty sizable ghost zones upwards. That would be a heck of a move to go from where it's at now to 475, but we have seen a lot of crazy moves this week on some tickers. Let's dig into its data really quick and see what it says. Now that we've checked its levels, we'll flip back and forth and kind of see what we like if we need to go for it. Not a whole lot of flow going into it right now. I don't think its options are as heavily traded as some other things. Its current time net flow is quite bearish, and going in a little further, it's also quite bearish. But news can change things pretty quickly. As far as its back test goes, It's also an inverse. It's a long over. So there's one data point that's contrarian against what the net flow is currently saying, but those update pretty frequently. It's got a pretty decent win rate, not huge, but it is currently a long over. So, and you can see we got that as those built up over time. We started to see a little curl there on Friday, but that could have just been market sentiment pulling it that direction. For Tuesday, we're looking fairly even when it comes to bull bear. Another one of those days, right? Going into Wednesday, Thursday, more kind of evenness, and then our Friday look, a little bit slightly bearish, but still isn't enough for me to lean fully bearish there. Let's go ahead and take a look at a 10-day out to see. So a little more bearish if we go into 10 days. Dealer OI, pretty interesting. Its biggest bar here is at 4616 pushing out, and that is quite a bullish position. And then a little further out, it gets bear. So there's a second data point with some potential upside that we see, and it's still a little contrary to a few of the data points we see here. But it looks like midweek and early Tuesday, it could potentially see a run or just a chop range day. All right, so that's another data point we're looking at there. Let's go ahead and get to its GEX and see what it's currently saying. It goes all the way out to 616. See, we're at 448.58. So right around in between these two ranges right here, 445 and 455. So 455 should be our pull. Our biggest pull appears to be 470, which is really interesting. Over that, some potential repels from 475 and 480. So with some good news that moves LMT, this could be a really good long if it manages to get back, pull down here to me, because I'm a patient person. Maybe it runs without me. Maybe I missed the entire thing, and that is okay. This isn't one of those ones that I trade too often, but when it goes, it really does go. Both directions. All right, so that is LMT for us. That is what I'm watching for the week. These are kind of three tickers that I've got my eyes on. I'll probably put a scratch on BABA for myself, but somebody did request it, so I went ahead and did it. I really don't trade China stocks too often, even though they just happen to have massive runs sometimes. And sometimes when we have good news over on our side, on the US side, China stocks perform not as well during that time. So I'm going to ignore BABA. I'm going to keep my eye on JPM, and I'm definitely going to keep my eye on LMT as well. Everybody have a good week. Stay safe out there and go get that Oprah money.